My name is Sarah Milligan. I'm with the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program at the Oklahoma State University Library, and I'm here today with Sandra Bradley in Maud, Oklahoma, and the date is June 15th, 2015. And we're going to talk today about Sandra's experience at Oklahoma State University and her life after graduation and everything in between. And Taryn, our intern, is here with us in case Taryn's voice pops in anywhere. We want to know. And speaking of, we get to identify your friend.
Yes.
I'm gonna.
This is Maximus.
Hi, Maximus. We get an interview companion. He looks like a pretty good companion. All right, so we talked a little bit about what this interview process is about and what we're trying to do. So just to get started, I just wanted if you would tell me a little bit about your life in general, just where you're from, a little bit about your family, just some background information.
Okay. Born and raised in Shawnee, Tecumseh area. Graduated from Tecumseh High School in 1991, and have one sister and a cousin, and we're all considered sisters basically. And
and remember, pauses are like there's no pressure on
okay,
this.
good.
This is on, but there's like no pressure. So maybe a little bit. So you grew up in the Shawnee Tecumseh area. Was there a specific community that you attach yourself to?
Tecumseh.
In Tecumseh.
Yes, Tecumseh. We moved to Shawnee when I was about 9.5, but we were allowed to stay in Tecumseh schools because Mom worked at Kojak.
Got it.
And so that was good to be able to stay with our friends and finish what we started, and that's home. Tecumseh's home.
Tecumseh.
Yeah.
So if you don't mind me asking,
Yes.
when were you born?
In 1973.
1973.
Yes, ma'am.
So maybe a little bit about what your parents did and more about your cousins and your siblings.
Okay. My parents, I was raised in a single parent family. They divorced when I was 1, and my mother, she began working out at Kojak, which is the Central Oklahoma Juvenile Treatment Center, and it was an all-girls facility at that time. She started out as the gatekeeper, and then worked her way up as a supervisor. She passed away in 1991 also, and so then my grandparents played a big role into our lives on her parents, my maternal grandparents, and they were there to support us, to help us, to guide us, and a lot of things throughout our lives, and were Mom's biggest support also. Yeah. My cousin, she was raised by my grandparents also, Meredith, and so we all grew up together, and when we went to OSU, her and I decided that that's where we were going to go and live together, and so that was just such a blessing to have that time and not to be with total strangers.
Understandably.
Yes.
So when did you go to OSU? What made you decide OSU?
Well, I had went to Seminole Junior College and got my associates, and then she was also going, and so we decided both at the same time, well, let's just go to OSU. We loved the Cowboys, and so why not go to the school that you love anyways. And so in 1994 is when, that August of 1994 is when I started at OSU, and then graduated in December 1996 with a Bachelor's of Special Education.
So tell me a little bit about your time. Did you live on campus? What was your sort of normal schedule like?
Oh, crazy. We lived off campus. We had an apartment, then we had a house, then we went back to an apartment. But it was all in close proximity to the campus. So usually it was either walking to campus or a short drive to campus. Classes at that point of my education were all mostly in the education building because of my degree, and was involved in the BSU there on campus, BSM, BCM, whatever they call it now, and had some involvement there. And
the BSU, go ahead and spell it out.
Baptist Student Union, Baptist Collegiate Ministry, whatever they call it these days, was involved in that also, and then worked there in the community at different jobs.
Like a lot of students.
Yes, worked your way through college. Yes.
Well, so tell me a little bit about your classes then.
I loved them because they were so small. The professors got to know you, you got to know your classmates, and you begin to really develop and grow into who you were going to be, I guess is a good way to put that. Really enjoyed the hands-on, because when you're in the education field, you did a lot of practicum and observations, and then they would pull kids in to do various reading programs and tutoring programs, and that was a very eye-opening experience for me, just to be able to go and see what it was like to be in the classroom, or what it was like to tutor a student, because I had done things with children at church or in different settings like that, but never in the classroom setting. So at that point in my life, that was a big, oh, this is what I'm going to do. Okay. Eye-opening experience for me. So yeah, I love the classes. They were really very good.
Are there any professors or people that you worked with that you remember?
I remember faces. I'm horrible with names.
Well, I'm obviously wonderful with names, so.
But I know that we had an assessment professor who, it was testing on how to do testing, and you would think that would be the most boring class, but she made it fun, she made it interesting, she made it exciting, and I do not remember her name, but she was an outstanding teacher, just to be able to bring what she knew from her experience into the classroom, and made that assessments class something you wanted to go to. So yes.
Nice. Yeah, I can imagine it would be hard to make assessment
Yes.
entertaining. Oh my gosh. Did you do a lot off campus?
What I did was I worked a lot.
Mm-hmm.
On off campus is what mostly off campus detailed was being at home, doing home stuff, doing homework, or going to work.
Mm-hmm.
Coming from a single parent family, I needed to work my way through college, and so a lot of it was at a second job or a first job, or trying to make sure that the bills were paid, and
Mm-hmm.
making sure that you got your studies done so that you made the grade that you needed to have. Yeah.
That makes me think. I think a lot of students come into a four-year college, and they come with the same struggles, but that's not always the story that you hear. I mean, a lot of times
Right.
you hear about college being this time where you just get to explore and find yourself, and don't often.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know. Is there things that helped you make that decision that that's where you wanted to put your priority, or is there anything that helped you?
My mom was, she taught us how to have a good work ethic. And growing up in a single parent family, you saw her work all the time. And so that just was in my sister and I's blood. Like, if you want it, you had to work for it. And so that was just how we were raised, and what we knew had to be done to make it anywhere in life. And I think that was one thing that just has continued to be a part of our lives too, is that if we want something, we have to work for it. It's not going to be handed to us. Just going to be honest. And so that was one thing that she instilled in us at a young age, was that work ethics, being women of integrity.
Mm-hmm.
So yes. And of course, faith played a lot into our lives, our faith, being believers and knowing that God was going to take care of us, but we have to do our part also in being able to take care of what He has given us.
Well, talk to me a little bit about that, because if you're involved in the Baptist Student Union, did you grow up in the Baptist church?
I did. When we were 3, I think it was. I say 3 because we're all within. My sister and I are 11 months apart, and then my cousin is in between us.
Yeah.
And so we were all 3 raised very
Yeah.
tightly together. I've mentioned that. But at that time, we were all around about 3 years old when we started
Yeah.
going to church. And it was all because my cousin had said, "Grandpa, we need to go to church."
Yeah.
And that made a changing point in our lives. He was raised in a church. My grandmother was raised Catholic, and he was raised more evangelical.
Mm-hmm.
And so when he said, "Well, let's go to this Baptist church that my cousin had pointed out," my grandma was like, "Okay." And so we all started going, and my mother started going, and she accepted Jesus in 1983. And that just began to change our whole family.
Right.
Because of her decision to believe, she was able to lead my grandparents to believe. and share the gospel with them, and they accepted Jesus also. And so then it just had that ripple effect to the rest of us in our lives when we made our decisions also to follow him.
Good.
Yes.
Well, it sounds like you had a support network when you went to OSU as
Very
well.
much so, very much so. They, by that time we were at OSU, my mother had passed away, and so my grandparents were very much our cheerleaders, our fans, the ones that we could say, I don't get this, I don't understand it, and they, yes you do, you can do this. And they would just, push us forward, and each other being there for each other. I think living with a relative when you're in college is a benefit because they know your past, they know what you struggle with, but they also know what you're really good at, and so they help you become who you need to be, know. And so I think that has been a benefit of being at OSU also, is how much I grew as a person with having that living experience and then being involved in BSU and in the classes.
Yeah.
You just find yourself. You're no longer who your parents said you were going to be, but you're who you are supposed to be.
It sounds like some of your only campus activities, and correct me if I'm wrong, were with the BSU.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Maybe talk a little bit about what their activities were and how you socialized.
Okay. They had Bible studies, they had weekly Bible studies that we could be involved in, and I was involved in. And then also they would have social activities where they would either go play volleyball or they would go have a cookout, and so different things like that throughout the year was something that I was involved in with the BSU. And so building those friendships and relationships there were essential into shaping more of who you are also.
Did you do you still have friends that you met while you were on campus?
Yes, I do, actually. She is here in Oklahoma now, her and her family. They just moved back from Hawaii. Her husband's in the military. I know.
Hawaii?
Yes, and she is the only one that I've kept in contact with. And I think it's because it's been a two-way, instead of just the one-way. And so being able to visit with her this summer, I'm looking forward. They just moved back in the fall, so with the busy schedules and everything, we haven't got to, but we're looking forward to seeing each other in the summer
that's great.
to catch up. So that'll be good.
Are they close?
They're in Lawton.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
No, it's not bad.
It's not bad at all. That's good. Okay, well then let's talk a little bit about what you have done since graduation. You graduated in 1996 with a degree in education focusing on special ed.
Yes,
Is
ma'am.
that correct?
Yes,
like
ma'am.
that's the layer?
Yes.
So what happened?
Well, then I moved to Kansas City, Missouri, and worked on my Master's of Religious Education, and finished that in 1999, May of 1999. From Midwestern Baptist Theological Seminary. And as I was preparing within that particular educational degree, you focus on college, children, whichever range that you're going to be teaching. And looking back, I know I had the opportunity to do college classes where you learned how to meet the college needs and to relate to college students, and then you also had classes on children and how to relate to them and work with them. And looking back, I go, oh, that's why you had me do that. Because I went from Midwestern to Johannesburg, South Africa. Yes, drastic. So Maud America, Johannesburg, South Africa, I did children's ministry among the colored people out in El Dorado Park. A fantastic 2 years where I probably learned more about who I am than any other part of my life, because you're living by yourself in a totally different country. You have a support system with the International Mission Board, but they were not always right there physically. They may be 45 minutes away or an hour away, and so learning how to deal with situations and how to communicate and how to share the gospel the best way with the people that you're assigned to. I think that was very much a challenging time in my life, but also the most beautiful growing time in my life also. Yes.
Help me understand how you ended up there. What was the process and how did you feel when you found out?
When I was at Midwestern working on my master's, I really felt like I was called into missions, and the Lord really gave me a heart for international students. And that began in college. I went to First Baptist Church in Stillwater and helped with the international Sunday school class and would be involved in that, and learned a lot about just different cultures also when I was at OSU, and that cultivated that spirit and a desire to go. In college, back up a little bit, had the opportunity to go to Mexico and do a mission trip there. Of course, in the community that we were at, you may have learned Spanish in high school, maybe a little in college, but to be thrown into, fully immersed into the culture, you're like, I don't have the knowledge I need, but it was so neat to be able to learn how to communicate using, body language and just hand gestures to communicate with the people that you worked with.
Who did you go to Mexico with? What group?
It was just a group that was going to Mexico. It was southern Oklahoma, like Lawton, and some other small churches that had gotten together to go to do a VBS down there. And so that was part of my college years that I had the opportunity to do that, and that's when that desire to be involved in missions grew. And so when I was at Midwestern, I was like, I need to be involved more, and so had the opportunity to go to South Africa for a 2-week mission trip when I was in Midwestern, and fell in love with the people. And one of the pastors there, Pastor George, he said, Sandra, you are coming back. I was like, whatever. If I'm going anywhere, it's going to be South America. This is too far from home. And he said, no, you will be back. You will be back. When you come back, you just let me know. We will take care of you. And I was like, okay. In the back of your head, you're like, whatever. But then in 2000, I had the opportunity to go back as a journeyman through the International Mission Board. And that requires the process of paperwork, applying, going to interviews, and going to candidacy conference, and being selected to go. And so it's a lengthy process to be able to go, but I wouldn't have changed any of it. No. And when I did go back, Pastor George was there, and his church became my base church that I worked from. They did take care of me. They did help me get into places that I could get into to minister with their help, and so that was just an amazing experience.
Do you remember when you, like the first day or the first week that you were there?
Yes. Because you have to drive on the other side of the road first, and
were you driving?
Yes, because the board said you cannot go unless you learn how to drive a standard first off, in which I'd always driven automatic, and so I had to learn how to drive a standard. So of course you learn on the side that we know, and then when I get there, everything changed, and I was like, oh my. The other feet, other hand, and I remember distinctly having a little wreck, but did damage the car. But they just said, okay, you just need to relax when you're out on the road and just make sure you're on the right side. And it was just that I had hit a curb that I shouldn't have hit, but that was the beginning of my adventure there.
That was your first week?
Yes. Yes. So.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
What else was a little unexpected?
I think living in a gated community, because everything, they have guards in your house. If you live in a house, you have a guard. If you live in an apartment, you have a guard. And so in the community that I lived in, community being the apartment complex, they were all what they consider flats. And so there was a gate that you had to have permission to come in. So if you were my guest, you would have to know my name and what apartment I lived in to be able to get in. And I think that was just a shock, because there are these walls and there's either barbed wire or broken glass on the top of that, so nobody can get in. And then on your doors and windows, there's bars. We live in Oklahoma. We don't have bars. And I think that was just probably a real shock to this Oklahoma girl, that I'm going to a culture that security has to be this way, and you have to be careful about what you do, and just be aware of what's going on in your surroundings.
Did you feel prepared for that when you left? Did you know that was coming?
A little bit. But I think that if you hear about it and you see pictures, it's nothing like until you're there and you experience it. I think that was one of the biggest shocks there, was to have that experience. Yeah.
So what were your goals while you were there? What were some of the specifics that you were doing? And
I was in charge of doing children's ministry, which was doing basically teaching churches how to do Sunday school, how to use God's Word as their curriculum, and then also did what you would call maybe child abuse clinics, because what we would think as child abuse is not child abuse there, and that meaning neglect. Because if they have water and milk, or water and bread and maybe some meat, that was a feast in the communities that I worked in. Where here, that would be neglect. And so teaching the workers in these churches to know what is important to look for and what is not important. I had to learn their system of how that played out as child welfare goes in South Africa than what it was here in America. And so that was eye-opening to see, because there would be communities where you would have houses, then you would have communities that were just shacks put up, and it was just literally 10 put together, 4 walls and 10 more roof, and everybody lived in that one room, and one water spigot to the whole area instead of a spigot to a house. And so those were challenging, heartbreaking times to know that these are conditions that people live in. So when I was there, having the opportunity to not only spiritually feed the kids and the families, but to also physically feed. When I worked with the church, Pastor George's church, they had what they called a feeding scheme. And so every week after school, we would fix something. And it was something that the kids could eat, usually with their hands, or and be able to have some nourishment before we would have class. But they knew every week they would get a meal from that particular church. And so that being a part of that and helping them grow that was essential. Being a part of an orphanage, going and working there with them and seeing, it made me cry.
It's a tough topic.
Yes. So many of these kids who've lost their parents. And then also seeing the joy of them being adopted out was also a wonderful experience also.
What were, and I'm trying to visualize this. I mean, obviously, and you brought this up, you having someone tell you about it or has seen a picture is never the same as experiencing it firsthand. And I wonder that with all these places that you went into, what were some of the things that maybe caught you off guard or that surprised you either way? The things that maybe you thought that you knew what you were going into,
right,
but was different when you actually got there.
I think the shacks, the shack community, they would call them squatter camps. I think that was probably the one thing that just really hit my heart the hardest, because you may see pictures and they may talk about it, and you even see it on TV sometimes, but not until you're there and you see the conditions and you meet the people that you put a face and a name with the environment, and then what's happening. But I will tell you, from that whole experience about living in Johannesburg, the people, when they have a relationship with Jesus, it is their hope. They may have nothing else, but that is their hope. Where in America, we will have a relationship with Jesus and it can be like, oh, well, that's my Sunday or it's my Wednesday. It is not their everything. And in Africa, it's their everything. And I think that was the most beautiful thing to see, was that relationship they had with their Creator.
Were they already invested in that relationship, that Christianity relationship, or was before you came in, or was that something you nurtured or fostered or began?
It depended on what situation I was in. Sometimes it was I had the opportunity to share and to grow and to disciple, and sometimes it was just walking alongside and encouraging and fellowshipping. Yes. Everybody needs to go.
So how far away were these communities from where you were in Johannesburg?
They were about 30 minutes to an hour away. So where I lived on the West Rand, I would have to commute 30 minutes or an hour out to a community to do the ministry.
So how many, were there other people with your organization who were in different areas that you could communicate with,
Yes.
that you saw?
Yes. A majority in Johannesburg at that time when I was over there, they had the mission, what they called the mission compound, which was on the East Rand, which was about 45 minutes on the other side of Johannesburg. And so you had the medical missions, you had the administrator, you had the accounting team. They were all on that side of the city. And there was 3 mission families on my side of the city that were working in the seminary or working with the schools in different settings.
When you said I'm from Oklahoma, did anyone have any concept of what that was?
Cowboy and Indians. Teepees. Every time. Do you still live in a teepee? No. We live in a house. You still riding a horse? No. So that concept, yes. The movies, they have that movie image in their head.
I'm just impressed they knew where it was.
I know.
That's interesting. So you were there for
2 years.
2 years the first time, right?
Yes. Well, 2 weeks the first time.
2 weeks the first time,
and then went back for 2
as
years
a journeyman.
Yes, and then went back as a journeyman. Yes.
Journey person. What's the PC?
They say journeyman.
Whatever you call it. It was your job. You can name it whatever you want. That's a lot of time. So
Yes.
what happened? Where else have you been? Because I know you've been a couple other places. What are some of the other?
I went, and when I was in South Africa, I had the opportunity to visit Lesotho, and which is a kingdom inside of South Africa, and I got to visit the family there, and thought I was coming back to the States, doing a 6-month turnaround and going back as a career missionary. That was my intention, was to go back as a career missionary to Lesotho, and the Lord said, no, you're not. And in that, upon coming back and having 3 months, it literally was 3 months of just grieving because you left the people that you fell in love with. The Lord began to open the door for a ministry in Shawnee. There is a company that was there on St. Gregory's campus who taught English as a second language. And so international students would come and learn English and then go to universities. They were college students mostly. And so that door opened for me to be involved in teaching English to those kids. And wow, if I don't get to go back, you're bringing the nations here. And so having that opportunity to build relationships with not only, people from Shawnee, but also from Ecuador and Brazil and Saudi Arabia, Mexico, Honduras, just having that experience to learn and to grow with them as they figure out where they're going in life. Because once again, I had the children's opportunity in Johannesburg, and I come back and now it's college students. And so going back to Midwestern and how those classes and those opportunities that I had there, he used them once again.
What year did you come back?
I came back in 2002, the end of 2002, and did odd jobs here and there, and then got involved in the private company teaching English as a second language, and then moved away, and then moved back. So it was kind of a crazy time because I didn't know where I was supposed to be. But upon coming back, I went back to the private company who taught English as a second language and became their admissions director, and did all the immigration and accounting for them. and then moved into the director position and was able to help run that particular site for a couple of years until they moved it to Ada. And then a door opened for me to go to the private university in Shawnee and teach and be the director over their English program until this past January.
Wow.
Yes.
So just for details, what was the private company that teaching English as a second language?
The language company.
The language company. And that was when they were based in Shawnee.
Yes, as the Shawnee English Institute. Yes.
And the private college in Shawnee is?
Oklahoma Baptist University.
And you were in charge of their English department?
In charge of their
teaching English.
intensive English program.
Intensive English.
Yes, their ESL program.
Yep.
Yes.
So, and you did that from 2000. Wait, I don't think we got a start date.
No, we didn't. The language company, I started with them in 2004, then left, and then came back in 2005. So it was like a 6-month jaunt period. In 2005 until 2013, I was with them, doing the admissions director and then director position with them. And then moved to OBU in May of 2013 until January of 2015.
2015.
Yes.
Okay. So how do you get from OBU to mod?
I know.
It's not that far. You're doing wrong.
Well, within my story, coming back in 2002, became involved in the church that I had been involved at Temple Baptist Church. There in Shawnee, got back involved with them, and that's where I met my husband. And we've been married 8 years this month, and I know that's what the Lord had in store. And here I wanted to go back overseas, and he said, no, you're staying. And he was called into full-time ministry 2009, 2008 or 2009. He was called into full-time ministry and quit his full-time job and became a full-time minister. And so the church down here, Trinity Baptist Church in Maud, called him to be their pastor a year and a half ago. So, yes. That's how we ended up in Maud.
That definitely happens. Would be a pastor family.
Yes.
Goes where you're needed.
That's right.
That's right. Well, so I'm visualizing this, and I'm trying to kind of wrap my head around all the things you've been doing, but also when you became involved with who's now your husband, right?
Yes.
So how did you feel when you realized that you weren't going to be going back abroad to do more missionary work?
Right. I think there was that grieving time, that 3-month of grieving time that I shared with you guys.
I see.
That was just dealing with the loss of not being able to go back overseas. Was that 3 months of just going, okay, and just feeling kind of lost in a sense, because you had placed your identity in this career that you thought you were going to have, and then realizing you're not. But then God opens the door for you to be involved with the language company and be involved with internationals here in Oklahoma. And my husband, he was doing college ministry at Temple before he was full-time pastor. And so being able to join him within that college ministry as we dated and got married has been a blessing also, because we have the opportunity and still do. I mean, even though we're in a church now, some of those college students are still very closely connected to us as family. And having the opportunity to pray with them and to encourage them and disciple them over the years has been a blessing, because a lot of them have went overseas also. So it's just kind of like a little piece of you goes with them.
I like that.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So talk to me about Maud, because give me the little profile of Maud and its population and what's happening here. And
it's a small town of 1,000 people. It used to be a very much a booming town with the oil, but as that phased out, the town basically, I wouldn't say died, but became very, maybe not really dead, dwindled. good word to put. And so you have seen this community thrive in pictures, and you hear people talk about the community where there were businesses downtown and things were happening, and all these wonderful things were going on in this community. And then as the oil bust happened, then this community basically dwindled. And so the businesses downtown are no longer there, only a few. And so they have become a community that supports each other, is what I've noticed in the past year and a half. Where if there is anything that goes on within a family in this community, they are there. The community is there. Not just the people who know them, but it's a community effort. And coming from, Shawnee to Kansas City to Johannesburg and then back to Shawnee and then here, it has been eye-opening for me because I've never had the experience of living in a small town. My husband Butch, he grew up in Stratford, and so he's used to that small town feel and what it's like to be a part of that. And so this past year and a half has been an eye-opening experience for me to see the love, the support, the encouragement that comes along when there's kids that are going through things, or when they're graduating, or when there's a sporting event, or when there's a death. There has just been this beautiful display of family in this community. Yeah.
How many people are in the congregation?
On a good Sunday, we have about 70. So that's good for a small town like that. That's very good. There's another Baptist church, First Baptist, is here also, and so to be this close to Seminole and then to St. Louis, which also has Baptist churches, that's a very good number to have. And this last week we had Vacation Bible School, and we had 50 some odd kids every night. And so that, yes, exactly. That was huge to see, and to see the church come together, but also when the parents would drop off the kids, sometimes they would stay and they would be involved. And so that was neat to see also. Yeah.
So what do you do on a day-to-day basis while you're here? What's a normal day look like for you? If you have a normal day, you may not.
I don't know what a normal day is. Well, in the fall, I've accepted a position at Shawnee Public Schools to be their ELL teacher. And so I get to go back to little kids and internationals, and so I'm so excited to see what that holds. It's going to be pre-K to 5th grade, and very excited of that opportunity as God's opened that door. So this summer I'm just kind of enjoying last bits of freedom, I guess you could say, without being tied down to getting things prepared, but looking forward to what that next job holds. So, yes.
That's interesting. I love how it came full circle too.
I know. It's beautiful, isn't it?
It is. It's very tidy. So talk to me a little bit about sort of, because the interview sort of started with OSU.
Yes.
Maybe do you feel that there was some sort of impact with your time there and how that relates, or?
I think going back to being in college also helps you find out who you are. I think that if I wouldn't have found out who I was, not based on my parents, what they thought, or my grandparents thought I was, but finding out who I was and what I believed and where I wanted to go, that has filtered through everything else that's happened in life thus far. Because when you find out that you can be independent and you can take care of yourself, you feel equipped to go and do what is set before you, I guess is a good way to put that. And being at OSU, having the opportunity to meet internationals, not only at the church, but the BCU, BSU, BCC, I've got it all confused now, BSU, but then also in my classes, I think had a big part in just that international heart being developed in me. Yes.
So had you had much contact with international students or people before coming to OSU?
Just learning learning about them when people would come and share about them at church. We had act teams at church, so you would learn about global missions. You would learn about local missions, and so reading and learning, but then is different than actually going and being there. So, yeah, that had a part of it.
So what made you choose OSU? I don't think I asked that.
You did, and I said it's because we love the Cowboys.
Sorry, I was
it all filters back to the
taking
sports.
Notes. That's right. I was just thinking, gosh, it's close to home, but that's not it.
No.
We love the Cowboys.
Yeah.
So I know that you talked about this too a little bit, but I'm also hearing more sort of getting fleshed out, and I'm just going to ask a little bit more about it. When you decided on that path for missionary work, what were some of the struggles? Because you're leaving home. I mean, you're away from home already in Kansas, but that's big. And you mentioned that it was a jump from here to there.
Exactly.
So at what point did you actually start to think, mission's gonna be my life? Like I need to get out of here and do some stuff. And
I can't really pinpoint when that was, except that had been something that missions had been taught and I was exposed to growing up with act teams in the church, and so it was all something that interested me, and kind of I was pulled in that direction of wanting to go and see what else was out there. I think one of the challenging parts was having to say goodbye to your family, because you don't know what's going to happen when you are thousands of miles away. And I think that's with anybody who moves from home. You just have to be prepared. And I remember distinctly, because my grandfather, I called him Papa, but he was the one that I always sought approval from. And I remember distinctly when it was time for me to apply and they were accepting me through the process, that I don't know if he's okay with this. And so I sent him a card and I said, I just need to know that you know that I've got to do this. This is what I'm supposed to do with my life. And I would love for you to approve it, to put your stamp of that's great on there, but if not, I'm still going to go. And I just really felt that strongly in my heart. And he made a trip to Kansas City and took me out one night and he said, you do what you need to do, but I want you to know that your grandma and I, we support you in whatever you choose. We are right there with you. And that was just a release of going, okay, the world is mine. That I can do whatever is set before me. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did they ever come visit you while you were out there in the world?
No, unfortunately they did not. My grandmother was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she had to go through treatments and things, and so they were unable to travel. But there wasn't a week that didn't go by that I didn't get a letter from her. So, yeah. So they communicated either by a phone call or a letter. Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's true. Technology has made it easier, even with phones.
Yes.
With the ability to call international, it's easier to be far away, but still.
True. It's much easier now than it was in 1999, 2000. Yes.
That's true too. Well, do you have any inklings on whether you'll be traveling more in the future? Does your husband have any interest to pick up and?
I don't think that we will go overseas to live, but I'm not opposed to overseas mission trips. I did have the opportunity in 2010, I think it was, that the pastor's wife at Temple and myself went to Malawi, and I was able to do some work alongside one of the ladies who was in college when we were both there, and so we got to work alongside her. And so having those opportunities like that as they arise, I'm all for it.
I don't blame you.
And he has a mindset that I get tickled because I'm like, well, the Lord said this is what we need to do, or I've been really praying about this and this is what direction. And so anytime that I come back and say, well, I've been really praying about going to Malawi for example, at that time, he said, well, I can't argue with God, can I? No, you can't.
Yeah, you've got a winner there. Do you still keep up with the people that you knew while you were in Johannesburg?
A little bit through Facebook. A little bit through I know.
Yeah.
Exactly. Some of them are on Facebook, and so I'm able to keep up with them.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Do you keep up with the adults or the children, or both, or a combination?
The adults. The adults. Yeah.
I mean, the children aren't children anymore.
Yes.
By this point, most of them probably
are adults now.
Yeah.
Yes.
You make special relationships, obviously,
Right.
with people when you're,
Right.
especially when you're away from your family and you're deposited. You find family.
Yes, you do. Exactly. That's exactly right.
Yeah. Anything interesting going on that end of the world? Have they continued to grow what you were working on?
Yeah, they're continuing to just grow. They've moved the ministry more into the Soweto area, which is among the black people. And so the missionaries that are there are working there. And of course the restructure of the IMB has kind of reorganized where people are serving at right now. So it changed a lot since I've left.
Yeah.
As far as who's there.
Was there ever an issue while you were there? Because I mean, you've mentioned that a couple of times, the mission to sort of the black communities, the black populations, or was there ever an issue with you being there and doing that outreach and not being black?
No. They loved my accent. They loved my laugh, and so they accepted me. No, that it was. They are very much an accepting people. If you come to work alongside them, they're going to just take you in as their family. And more than once that happened. So it's just a beautiful, beautiful country, but the people are more beautiful.
That sounds like you had
You
a
need to
really
go.
nice time. I hear
You
this
need
from
to
you.
go.
I hear this. Oh. Well, I hope that you get to go back someday too. It
Yes.
sounds like it. Oh, let's see. So you're moving to school in the fall. Going to start working in school in the fall. Getting settled into mod.
Yes.
And you're here as long as you need to be, as long as you're called to be.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Yes.
Had you ever been to mod before you moved here, or before you found out you were coming here?
Driven through.
We were talking about that this morning. A lot of people knew where mod was because they'd driven through.
That's right.
So what's your favorite thing to do here? Do you have anything?
In mod?
Mm-hmm.
I think our favorite thing to do is to have people over here in our home. Our home is a safe haven, but also our place where friends can come and just fellowship, and we play games and hang out and have meals. And I think that is one of the things that we really enjoy about being here, is building those relationships with the people.
It's important.
Yes.
Okay. Karen, any other observations or thoughts?
I have one quick question. It seems like your missionary work really taught you a lot when you were there. Has that helped you at all with the church?
Yes.
Here, have you been able to reach people on a more spiritual level than you have before, or what is that kind of like?
I think that being able to do the mission work that I did has equipped me in being able to be flexible, has given me the opportunity to say, well, if that didn't work, let's use something else to meet the needs of the people or to minister to them. And I think for me personally, I think that the Lord has given me a spirit of discernment, and so being able to see the needs of the people and praying for them even if I don't know them has been beneficial in what God is doing here in Lod. Yeah. Answer your question.
Yes.
Okay.
We were also driving through here, and we saw Wanda Jackson, and we actually saw it on a wall. It was like Wanda Jackson Day. Do you know who Wanda Jackson is?
She is a famous country singer.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. And
Yes.
is she from here?
She is from Lod, Oklahoma.
Okay.
Yes. that they no longer have the Wanda Jackson Day, but that used to be a very prominent day here in Maud, where they would have a festival. And I do believe, if I remember correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, if you find out differently, but that she used to come back and sing every now and then. But yes, she's from Maud, Oklahoma. So famous country singer. There you go.
We saw WJ, and I was like, that has to be Wanda Jackson.
Yes.
And I was like, who is Wanda Jackson?
So now you'll have to go look her up.
We will. We really appreciate your time.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Is there anything else that we didn't ask about that you want to talk about, or?
No, I think you've covered everything.
You've had some really great adventures. You're still going to have lots of great adventures.
Exactly. Life's not over yet, and there's more to come. And so having the opportunity of whatever comes this way, I think is going to be exciting to see what's next.
Fantastic.